I would like to start. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For everyone that's new to the group, my name is Monika. I'm co-chair of the group. And what we do is we focus on sharing knowledge and providing networking opportunities for PR and communications practitioners from the graduate level upwards. This is our first virtual event, so I hope it goes well and that you guys are going to enjoy it. And the reason why we're here today is to talk about mentoring. I'm sure you've all heard about it. And as I said, it would be great if you could pop into the chat what your views on mentoring are, if you have any experience, what you imagine it is, if you don't have any experience with that. For me personally, I would say that it's really about passing on knowledge and helping with professional and personal development, but we're here today to break it down and find out what it's really about. Just to give you an outline how the event is going to go, I'm going to ask our speakers, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, to share their experience with mentoring at first. Then we're going to have a discussion, and at the end, as I said, there will be room for your questions. You can also drop the questions into the chat during the course of the event, and we can revisit them at the end. So without further ado, I'm happy that we're joined tonight by Tamara Littleton, who is the CEO and founder of The Social Element and co-founder of Polpeo, and by Patrizia Heun, the senior account executive at the Hoffman agency. So I would like to start with Tamara, if possible, if you could introduce yourself briefly and tell us what your experience with mentoring has been.
Yes, of course. It's lovely to be here. I wanted to do, are we going to leave the screen on for the whole time just to sort of check, or it's fine if that is the case?
That's up to Kiri, who's sharing the screen, I believe.
I don't want to mess anything up, so I'll just carry on. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you. And I'll just sort of talk a little bit about my journey and my experience of mentoring. I started my own agency 18 years ago, and it's a social media agency called The Social Element. So I started it before Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. So it was an interesting time. As Monika said, I also co-founded Polpeo, which is much more well-known to the PRCA. We do a lot of work with the PRCA. It's a crisis simulation platform where we help people prepare for a crisis and actually rehearse what it's actually like to go through one, and how it breaks on social media. What's been interesting is that throughout my career, I've had several mentors, but they didn't necessarily know that they were my mentors. So I think a lot has changed over time, where it's sort of a slightly different approach now, but I kind of just saw people that I admired, and I either sort of tracked their career and had coffees with them, or they were my bosses. I've had some excellent bosses along the way. I've worked at the BBC and at Cello. So it was more sort of informal. I just learnt as I went, and I didn't really have an official mentor with a sort of a program and an approach. And it made me have a really strong desire to help people to have a mentor. So I've actually got several mentees now. I'm very passionate about women in the sort of marketing and PR industry, but also particularly female entrepreneurs. And so I started a group called Evil Genius, which is for people to, basically it's female entrepreneurs who get together. It's more like a group mentoring session. And I've been able to just facilitate and help them sort of get through different challenges and share where they are with things. So that was more sort of a peer group mentoring that I help facilitate. And I also am very passionate about LGBTQ entrepreneurs as well. And I'm a sort of a founding member of Series Q, which is all about helping LGBTQ entrepreneurs. And as a result of that, I've got various people that I do mentor along the way. So I think it was one of those things that, because I didn't have anything official and I felt that I could have really benefited from mentoring as I've kind of gone through my career, and as I started a company. It's for any of founders on the call, you'll understand this, that it can be very sort of lonely at the top, and I think mentoring is so important, either as you're going, projecting through your career, or you do something radically different and start your own thing. So yes, just to sort of repeat that I felt that I could have benefited, and so I'm trying to now give back by mentoring other people, and helping them along the way.
That sounds absolutely fantastic, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Patrizia, could you share your experience with mentoring so far and a little bit about what your role is and what you do?
Sure thing. First of all, I have to say I'm just in love with the name Evil Genius. I heard the first time and I thought it's great. Yeah, so while Tamara has done already so many great things and founded things, I'm at the very beginning of my PR career. As you might hear from my accent, I'm not native English, so I came from Germany, did my master's in London in PR, and through an internship I got into my first role in a PR agency. And yeah, I don't know, for everyone who has been to uni, to school, I guess we can all agree school and real life in terms of real work life is different. So yeah, for me, mentoring really helped a lot. Obviously, I learned a lot during the first few months, and still from my team. But yeah, the mentoring thing was just a different approach to learn skills that I didn't know I would need. And it's just some of these things that you just realize while you start, be that the work-life balance or just like the soft skills where you're like, oh, that would be good. It would have been good to know. So yeah, that's how I came to mentoring, because my boss Mark actually suggested it. And I gotta say, I think it's a bit similar to Tamara. I have had mentors, I guess, and like excluding my parents, just at uni, just people who help you through things, right? And I just didn't really think of mentoring as something that kind of can be a part of your work life as well. I thought that's more of a, you're student, you're still learning, but obviously you're still learning when you're in a job. So yeah, it was really interesting for me to discover that this world of mentorship is really big and helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. So I would actually like to start by asking what the difference is between mentoring and coaching, because those are two terms that are floating around quite a bit. Are they different? Are they similar? What are they? If you could start, Tamara, because I know that you're an experienced mentor.
Sure. Well, the cynical answer is that mentoring is usually free and coaching is usually paid for. But I would sort of say that I personally see mentoring as a bit more informal. And it's about having someone who shares their experiences to help guide you through your career. Whereas coaching is probably more structured and focusing on challenging your mindset and holding you accountable, but it does get quite blurred. And I personally, my mentoring style is to sort of switch between the two a little bit. So I can understand why people do get a bit confused, because it is a little bit blurred.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. That's why I'm asking about it. So you both mentioned that you have experience with mentoring, which is why you're here today. So for the ones among us who don't have any experience with mentoring, could you guys tell us a little bit about how the relationship between a mentor and mentee works? For instance, how often would they interact with each other, and how would a typical mentoring session work? Patrizia, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure thing. Um, that's a good question, actually. I think, well, it's hard to just generalize it. I guess the relationship depends a lot on the different characters and how you agree together and set up your meetings. But yeah, I think it's all about trusting each other. It's really important, I would say. Having a certain like chemistry when you come together, and like understanding where each other is coming from, and that kind of genuine desire to like learn from each other, I think is also really important. Like if you're not really interested in having these meetings, then just do it to take a box off, then I think it's not really going anywhere for neither one.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you meet with your mentor?
I think that's also very, depending on how much well, obviously the timing thing. I mean, obviously your mentor might be a really busy person, so that plays into account, I guess. But anything else is free and up to you. And if it helps you to have like one set appointment or like once a week, I guess fine. But if you're more a person who wants to just message your mentor or drop an email when there's something coming up and you're like, oh my god, I really need your advice now, and that works for both of you, then that's, I think, fine too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, the relationship is it's probably about 80% listening, and then 20% of it is giving an alternative viewpoint or advice, or it's just about asking questions, really. So from the mentor side, the way I see it is a bit like therapy. That it's kind of, as the mentor, I see it as my role to draw out the issues, and often my mentees, they kind of have the answers themselves. They just need a bit of confidence building, and perhaps having someone to ask the right questions to help them get to where they need to get to and make the right decisions for them. It's not about me just sort of saying, oh yeah, no, I understand that you need to do this, 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 and this. It's a lot of it is just about being a sounding board. And I find that I'm probably not as structured as other mentors, and it does come down to just my time, and sort of it just becomes hard to sort of like meet in a very, very fixed manner. But I always try to have a sort of semi-regular meetings in person or on Zoom, of course, perhaps every quarter, and have a sort of a big session, maybe like a few hours, or time over a nice long meal or something like that, or a whiteboard session if you can do that virtually or in person. But yeah, then as Patrizia said, that being able to be available on WhatsApp, I think, is crucial, because it might be that the mentor needs me because they're going through a bit of a crisis, or they just need some help with a particular situation. So I think that being present on WhatsApp is really key, but having the structure of a regular meeting to set objectives, or to sort of help hold them accountable.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically a combination of having the ad hoc situations when you feel like you need help, versus having, like, say, progress sessions when you really discuss like what the long-term goals are. Would you say that that's how it works?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay. What are some of the skills that your mentor can help you develop, for instance? Patrizia.
Wow. I think, a lot. I think it starts, obviously there are all the knowledge-based skills, but as Tamara mentioned earlier, it's more than just coaching, right? It's beyond that. It's about the whole understanding who you are. So also, and that includes, I would say, the life circumstances in a way. So for example, what I've done with my mentor is that, like, we start with just a simple question, that's how are you? So it's about, like, what else is going on, but like not just oh, how are you, but like really what's going on, because the understanding of that these circumstances might affect the way you work, or whatever it is that you might struggle with, is really key.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, when you started mentoring, what did the first session look like?
Right. I'm just going to start from the mentee perspective here, and then I'm going to give it to Tamara from the mentor perspective. It was kind of an experiment. So the very first session was literally just me with a little piece of paper where I had like written down a few of my objectives and what I wanted to, learn or, get insight from. And that was it. And the name of my mentor that I'm going to meet in a second. And from there on, it was just, getting to know each other and discussing how certain like objectives or goals could be reached. And even like roughly how we, what we want to get out of it, like to tell each other, where do we want to be and how do we want to get there. That was pretty much the first session. I don't know for you, Tamara, if that was something you did as well.
Well, I think the key for me is that the people that I've mentored are all people that I knew before. So there was a sort of a certain level of understanding their personality. So it moved on to quite an interactive session. My MO is usually to do a big sort of Mindmeister session. I don't know if people have used that before. It's kind of like a mind map, and I just sort of find it just helps me understand that person, and just getting into the detail of what drives them, what they enjoy, what they're finding difficult, what their challenges are, but not in a really overly structured way. It's a little bit more freeform, and that's why I like that software so much. And I've been doing that in person. It works really well virtually as well, but it just allows you to just get everything out of what's going on, and then helped just sort of set the tone for what we would talk about next time. So I think that very first session is always for me pretty hands-on and quite objective focused, but it's also about getting to know the person. So in a very, very similar way, it's kind of just get it all out of your head, let's talk about it, and then from there it flows nicely into sort of setting a bit of a plan, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it's really important to really get to know each other, and that's really like a key element of being a mentor and mentee?
I think it's absolutely crucial. I think, and that goes both ways. They need to understand what I can do, what I might be helpful with, my experience, why I'm a good match for them. It's a very kind of it's a relationship, isn't it? It's kind of it's a work relationship. So there is a lot of trust, and also knowing that you feel comfortable being vulnerable in front of someone else, because I've had sessions over coffee or over wine where there have been tears, and that's not always easy. Again, I don't want to keep banging on about therapy, but it's that having that confidence to be vulnerable is really, really key, because only when you're vulnerable are you able to sort of share what's really going on, and then you can both kind of look at it together and see where you go from there. So and not everyone is comfortable getting emotional in front of someone else, so that trust is absolutely key.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because when you were talking about the coaching versus mentoring thing earlier, I thought, yeah, it's the coaching is always this kind of, and this is how you do it, and like this is how you get positive stuff out of it. Where I find that mentoring also includes the weaknesses in a way. So you open up to show your weakness and like admit that this is where you maybe struggled, or maybe even where you failed, or messed something up. And I'm not saying that's necessary what you have to be talking about with your mentor, but it is something you should be comfortable talking about with the mentor. Because
definitely,
yeah. So yeah, you're right. The trust thing is really a big point.
Right. What should the expectations be, both from the mentor and from the mentee side, when they get together and they want to have this relationship?
Do you want me to start with that one?
Yeah, go for it.
I think the mentee should expect to be challenged, and held accountable, and you have to put the work in as well. It's not about someone turning up and expecting me to have all the answers, or having any mentor have all the answers. But I think you're going to be enriched by having a mentor who has expertise or knowledge, or has just been there, done that. So I think it's important to pick what's going to work for you, and why you want that particular mentor. So you kind of it's because you will get that expertise and that knowledge, and I think that a good mentor doesn't tell you what to do. They guide you there, but you do have to figure it out yourself. So I'll go back to you do need to put the work in, and I think a guiding hand is just it's someone to bounce off, really, and it's much better than going it alone. So I think just expecting having a guide, but do come ready to put some work in, not necessarily on setting objectives or whatever, but work on yourself as well, which probably does come back to that vulnerability and trust.
Yeah, 100% agree. I always think of my mentor as kind of the big PR sister in a way, because it's like you're not, I don't know if you guys have siblings, but where you had these situations where you rather go maybe to your big sister, your big brother, than to your parents to talk about maybe something you messed up, or maybe something where you're like, can I really ask this? And it's kind of the same. I feel like when you're working, like maybe you feel uncomfortable asking a certain question, or I don't know, just want to ask the question like maybe 101 or 2 times, and then you have someone external who can like kind of comfort and support you there. And I think it's really also key that both of them again care about the relationship, and like to not just tick boxes.
It's also quite useful if they have a good network and contacts to sort of help in terms of everyone needs someone who goes, oh, I know exactly who you need to talk to about that, and so that's kind of quite useful as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because that's one of my first thoughts when I sat down with my mentor. Was like, okay, I'm new to PR. How does everyone have these people that and you can just call them and pitch them? And I was like, oh, okay, I think I have to learn a lot. And then just even having these kind of tips, like where do you get to know people? How do you get to know people? And getting introduced. Yeah, it's true.
That brings me to the question, do you think it's actually really important for your mentor to be really senior and much more experienced than you? Do you think that that's really like what adds the value? Or could it essentially be just someone who has a bit more experience than you and can guide you? Or do you think it's really about someone being extremely experienced who can really immerse you in everything that they know?
I think I'm going to leave that one to you, Patrizia.
Yeah, well, obviously I only have had like now one proper mentor that I call mentor. And I have to say, I think it is really helpful that the person is a bit more senior, at least has in some way more experience than you have. But I don't think that it has to be necessarily connected to only the professional experience. I mean, if you want to, I don't know, be better with certain soft skills or with your work-life balance, I think having someone who had maybe negative experience with that might be even more helpful. Or job title doesn't say anything about your quality as a mentor. So
right, yeah, I was just wondering, do we all, if we want to get a mentor, should we only be looking at CEOs and managing directors and so on, or is it okay to look for someone who might not be that much further up than we are and still be able to learn a lot from them as a mentor?
I think actually the sort of very senior people can be a bit too busy sometimes. I mean, yes, it's great if you can have more seniority, but I think it's more having just someone who's just a little bit further ahead than you is also useful. So I think, because a lot of it is about someone who's been through some things and seen some things and perhaps has gained a bit of confidence as a result of that. So no, they don't need to be like super senior, but I would say that someone who's perhaps a bit more senior than you is a positive thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that mentoring is something that's good for everyone? Like, is it a type of learning experience that would work for everyone, or does it take a specific kind of person who would benefit from mentoring? Tamara, if you could start.
Sure. I mean, I think it is something that everyone should have and would benefit from. I think we should all surround ourselves with mentors, but I think the key thing is that if you don't, maybe if it doesn't work for you to have a one-to-one mentor and have a bit more structure, I suppose, but at least have some unofficial mentors that you can go and stalk on LinkedIn or something like that. Just sort of like, so follow, research what other people are doing that you admire, and try and get time with them, even if it was just very irregular check-ins. I think the nirvana is I think people should have a mentor and have a bit of structure. If that can't work for whatever reason, or you haven't got the ability to find someone who will mentor you, then at least just stay close to what other people are doing in your industry and learn in that way. But yeah, I'm going to say it would be great if everyone had a mentor.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully after today, everyone that's with us today will be able to find one, which brings me to my next question, which is, how should you actually find a mentor? How do you approach someone? How does that work? Yeah.
Right, tons of different options, right? Well, I guess you could just go to Tamara. I have to say I was really lucky that, yeah, Mark, so my boss in this case, suggested it, because yeah, that was again one of those things where I kind of could benefit from the people and yeah, their experience that he knows because yeah, I didn't know Caroline, so yeah, he brought us together, which was kind of helpful because he obviously knew both of our characters, like, you know, what would we kind of click with that work, and he was right because it worked. So yeah, I think it's helpful if you have someone maybe in your company who also knows how you work to maybe, you know, get you in touch with someone who can mentor you. Or I mean, there are these several programs. I know that our company has some in the US or Asia as well. So I mean, if you are, you know, if they're open to let you suggest maybe who might be the right person to mentor you as well. Yeah, but I think the personal connection is kind of key, I would say, or helps.
And I love the fact that, you know, we're even having a discussion about mentoring, that it's become, you know, higher up the agenda, and the, you know, the PRCA are so invested in sort of helping with sort of mentor programs. But I would say that the best way, I suppose, if you are part of an industry group, so obviously PRCA, fantastic. There are if you are maybe part of a private WhatsApp group, so a lot of sort of activity around PR going on in Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. You can get to know someone more senior that, you know, if you maybe admire them and you see how they're corresponding with other people, and you sort of think that might be a good fit for me, you can approach them and see if they would be sort of willing to mentor you. I realize that it's not always easy to just go and approach someone. And I think what is not a great thing is if you just sort of find someone on LinkedIn and think, oh, you're senior in PR, and just send them a message and say, will you mentor me? I think it's absolutely crucial that you do establish some sort of connection, or if you're introduced, which is fabulous, so someone has already done the sort of the matchmaking for you. But the other thing is just to approach someone, see if you can establish a bit of rapport and relationship, and then just ask them. And they will probably be very flattered. I'm sure that they will be keen to help, or they will tell you that they are too busy, and that's fine. But I think it is a kind of as straightforward as that. It is about getting to know someone and asking them. But it becomes a bit easier if you do have a bit of a plan of what you're looking for, rather than just, you know, will you mentor me? That can be another way in, is actually asking for a virtual coffee with someone and just say, I would love to talk to you about how you dealt with this, because it's a similar thing for me. And then that can either lead to just getting to know someone else in the industry, or you can move it on and ask if they would be willing to perhaps move to a more sort of structured relationship and support you.
Mm-hmm. I really like the idea that you would basically kind of like start establishing relationships with different people and asking them small questions about something that you're struggling with or that you're doing, and that it could actually like develop into the mentoring relationship. I think that that's an excellent piece of advice, because I feel that a lot of people, they would love to be mentored, but they indeed don't know where to start, or they didn't have anybody who would, like in Patrizia's case, just introduce them to somebody. Where would you say is the best place to really meet these people? Is it just about going to events, or would it be okay to just drop someone a message on LinkedIn and suggest having a conversation?
I mean, I think in in the good old days when we were able to go to conferences in person, that's a fantastic opportunity to get to know people and then sort of follow it up. And again, maybe use that approach of asking some questions about specific things and asking for a follow-up coffee or something like that. But I think just direct. I personally find it very off-putting when someone just who doesn't know me at all, just out of the blue, connects on LinkedIn and then just says, "Will you be my mentor?" It's like someone has just sort of said that's what you need to do, and I kind of like I need to know who they are. I can't be a good mentor if I don't even know the person. So I think establishing some sort of connection, and so I would say that industry groups, LinkedIn groups, you can converse, you can get to understand someone, but don't go in too cold. I mean, it's a bit like sales, I suppose. You don't go in completely cold. You build it up a bit.
Not if you actually want to sell something, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So would you say that it's really important when you start thinking about having a mentor, approaching someone, start having those conversations, do you think it's really important for you to sit down at first and think about the things that you want to improve, be it the soft skills, be it the hard skills, or do you think that it's something that the mentor can also help you figure out? Patrizia, what's been your experience?
I guess a little bit of both. It's kind of one of those things where you just go with the flow, which, like, to be very casual, just have an idea what you want to achieve and what you want to learn, because in the end it's time that both of you invest, so you want to get something out of it. So I think a little bit of an idea would be helpful, but then I think there are always things coming up, while you're learning and while you're also like growing in your role, where you might feel like, okay, maybe I need to dig a bit deeper when it comes to, I don't know, writing, or so you figure out after a while what you want to be better at, and I guess it's the same for the mentor. That's obviously now assuming Tamara, but just as the better you know the person sitting on the opposite of the table, maybe it's also easier for you to say, okay, I can see that maybe you have an anger issue, or just like those kind of things where you're like, okay, maybe that's also the reason why this and this is not working, and you just
definitely. I think the slightly more things like communication style and the softer skills will be talked about as the relationship grows, but I agree that coming perhaps with one challenge to start with is a good way to sort of build that mentor-mentee relationship, and it's also it's something to focus on. It's a starting point rather than just I'm a blank canvas, mentor me. It's kind of actually I struggle with this, or I'd like to change career path or something. Coming in with something that is quite tangible is just easier to start with, and then everything kind of flows from there. And I would sort of say that also just, we've sort of mentioned it a couple of times, is bearing in mind that people are busier and busier these days. I think as a mentee, to sort of show that you have a bit of a plan of some of the areas that you would like, and that you're going to do all the work. So you're the one making the notes, you're the one sort of following up from the discussions, rather than expecting the mentor to sort of do all of the work. They're giving up their time and experience and being that sounding board, so they don't necessarily want to be just doing loads of admin in that sort of relationship and experience. So I think just bearing in mind that it's up to you to keep your own notes and do a lot of the work around it, if that makes sense.
It does, totally. I'm wondering, what has been the biggest lesson that you have both learned, both from being a mentee and also, Tamara, for you, what have you learned from being a mentor?
I think I had to remember that it's not about me finding the solutions. I'm naturally a bit of a problem solver. I think that's why I've sort of started 2 companies. It's just something that is in me. I tend to sort of go, oh, that's interesting. Let's fix that. And for me, that was one of my biggest sort of learnings is to remember that it should be more 80% listening and then sort of 20% discussion, but it's not up to me to fix or say this is exactly what you should do or do it like me, because actually I don't want anyone to do it like me. I'm very happy to share my experience to start a discussion, and what I would hope is that people come to their own conclusions. And I do remember there was one woman that I mentored. She's absolutely fantastic, and she sort of pivoted her businesses so many times. And there was one time early on that I kind of came up with a bit of an entire marketing plan for her. And then I got a bit frustrated when she didn't follow it. And then I realized that's not my purpose. That was me being a little bit selfish of just like, oh, I'm just so excited about your business problem. I'm just going to solve it because I'm just a bit weird like that. I get really excited about doing things like marketing plans and here's your entire strategy. Here you go. Off you go. I've sorted it for you. And it's not about that. It's about just shut up and listen and help them get to where they need to get to. So I think that was a big learning curve for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess the learnings I had were probably a bit more like obviously practical, but it was really interesting for me to realize how much it helps to talk through things, be that just because it is someone who's not working in the same company and maybe has a completely different view, or just sharing their experience. And like for me it was really helpful on the other side to listen to their experience and to see that everyone makes mistakes, and how you can like turn this into a learning instead of just seeing it as a failure. And I gotta say I really 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 appreciate that Caroline talked me through the whole work-life balance and like how much anything around you can affect your work. And that like the whole that reaches from time management to stress management to just like little tricks that might be they are now maybe obvious when I would like tell you, okay, this is what I do, but
well, actually I was going to ask, I know it's a bit off topic, but we all need a little bit more work-life balance. So if you could tell us what your mentor advised you, I think that everyone will really highly appreciate that, especially now working from home. The work-life balance can be kind of tricky.
Fair. Well, yeah, cool. That's obviously very subjective now, but one of my main things that I wanted to discuss with my mentor and that we did solve was kind of like, taking breaks, because especially now I kind of sometimes I just work through just because I'm in the flow and then I forget it. And also to like, not only because it's healthy for you, but also to like use these like breaks to get away from your desk, and then when you sit down again you have a completely different view. And we talked actually a lot about it's just whatever helps you, kind of like methods to calm you down. Could be yoga, could be running, obviously that's different, but just like talking about these the methods, maybe that whatever helped her as well. That was very helpful.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that it's really appreciated. And obviously, everyone has different things that help them achieve the balance. I'm wondering if you guys could share with us your advice to anyone who, after today, is like, okay, I think that mentoring sounds like an amazing thing. I sort of have an idea now how to go about it. What would be your one piece of advice to anyone who is considering finding a mentor now? Tamara, could we start with you, please?
Just get on and do it. I kind of like the asking someone else to find you a mentor. It does. I kind of really I love the fact that Patricia's boss helped find a mentor. I think that's just a beautiful, wonderful thing. So perhaps it would be, go and talk to your boss about help as well. But I think we all need a bit of help, especially now more than ever. So I would kind of question why you wouldn't want a mentor. So perhaps just crack on.
Yeah, maybe also get rid of that, like don't be afraid to maybe ask people, to help you, because it's not a sign of weakness, I think. And sometimes I've met people who are like, oh, mentoring, okay, is that because you can't do this or that? It's like, no, there's way more behind it, and it doesn't need to be a negative stigma or anything. So yeah, just think, don't be afraid. As Tamara said, go find yourself a mentor or someone who can introduce you to one.
Yeah, and I think it's also an amazing practice for building relationships, because especially the one of us that work mainly in media relations, we're building relationships with journalists all the time. So it's maybe a good practice also to start building them with people in your own industry, which can help you moving into building relationships with journalists, right? I would like to open the floor to questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them into the chat. I'm going to have a look if anyone has already asked anything. Bear with me because I haven't had a chance to read the chat yet. So we have a question here. Could Tamara share a couple of examples of the kinds of things that she has been asked by mentees to help with and how she guided them?
Yes, of course. So just bearing in mind that it's mainly people running their own businesses, some of it, so less about people in the PR industry, it could be completely different industries. So there's a lot around pricing and understanding your own self-worth. It's very difficult for people who start their own companies to figure out how much to charge for their own time, or selling their own things. So there's been a lot around the finances and working out sort of basic help with finances, but also that confidence building of why it's important and how to price yourself. So that was a sort of some very specific things, but it comes up quite a lot. Things around just bouncing some ideas about wanting to go in a different direction, and particularly during this last few months there have been a lot of people where their business has been threatened and they've had to completely change and pivot. And so again, just being a sounding board on how to do that, and maybe some contacts to help them. And I think when I sort of go back to what I was doing with the Evil Genius group, I ended up becoming more of a facilitator of that group, because we had a nice structure, and it was people sharing their needs and leads, and then someone would share one particular issue. So everyone would sort of say, this is what I need, and then someone would say, I've discovered this great app, you've all got to start using it, which is kind of, I love that sort of just sharing. And then someone would go into more detail about how they're trying to get through one particular challenge, and then everyone was giving some insight onto that, which was quite a nice way to do it. So that group mentoring can be a good approach if you don't want the one-to-one approach as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Then we have another question for you, which is, I wonder if Tamara could expand on some of the motivations for mentors to share their experience and time with mentees. I think that's actually really interesting. Why should anybody decide to become a mentor? Yeah.
Sure. Well, I guess there is an assumption that it's a very altruistic thing to do. And it's not actually, because I get just as much out of mentoring that I really hope that my mentees get from working with me, because it gives me energy. Working with people, I love hearing their journey. I just love work. So anyone who comes to me, I'm the sort of person who, when I'm on holiday, I like talking to people about work challenges. So I get a lot out of understanding what their challenges are, listening, and I suppose that dopamine hit of when you know that you said something that's resonated, and perhaps they've gone on a different path, or they've sort of built confidence to to have that tricky negotiation with someone that they were putting off or something. A lot of what I do is around, communication style as well. And so that gives me a real sort of lovely, warm and fuzzy feeling that I've helped someone and that it's been a positive thing. But it also just keeps me engaged. I love the energy and passion from people talking about work, and I feed off that. So it's not just a one-way thing.
Mm-hmm. Patrizia, I'm just wondering, after you've been mentored now, would you consider becoming a mentor in the future? Do you think that it would be something rewarding and kind of like giving back? Or do you think that it takes a specific kind of person to become a mentor?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing that you really need is that kind of passion for it, or at least, you know, the will to do it and the will to listen actively, not just to reply. And and I think what Tamara said is pretty much what I heard from Caroline as well, that she said she learned something from me as well, which was really surprising to me, obviously, because I thought, oh, okay, she's my teacher, I learned from her. But no, it's kind of a two-way thing. And so yes, definitely would consider that. I think it's really, really interesting and very rewarding to help other people with that. And especially if you have been there and maybe if you have made those mistakes, why not share it with others before they make the same ones?
For sure. Then we have another question. Do you have any specific recommendations for founders who are looking for a mentor? Where could I go and find one?
That's a really interesting one. I think there's also the I get a lot personally from peer support groups. So I'm a member of something called the Supper Club, which is for entrepreneurs and founders, where I have sort of group dinners with other people who've started companies, and I get a lot from that because it's sort of sharing our successes and failures and just giving advice, and it's continued online. In the same way, I think the PRCA is very good at putting together people to share advice. And then I think from those groups, it's the same sort of thing, that if there is someone that you particularly connect with or bond with, or you just, there's a sort of a, you think their values are the same, you've got to know them in that peer group, and then you can perhaps ask for help. And I find that the whole thing with founders, it's always in a similar way. It's like I get advice from people who are further in the journey than me, who perhaps bigger agency or done things that I want to do. So that's I then sort of look at them as my support group. I've personally paid for a external coach because I need a bit more of just a very structured, I'm very undisciplined in my thinking, and I need someone to really guide me. So I sort of pay for a coach, but I find that I get mentoring from peer support in different industry groups.
We have one more question, which is fairly long, but I'm going to read it all. A question for both, really, but do you feel as though there has been a newfound focus on mentorship, given everyone is working from home and no longer interacting with folks on a regular basis? How do you think that mentorship could help people dealing with those that are furloughed, looking for new jobs, or just feeling isolated working from home?
I'm going to put the PRCA on the spot. Is like, what was the motivation for doing a panel on mentorship? Is that because the members are asking about it more?
Well, for me, so
sorry, was that a question for me, guys? Sorry.
It is. It's actually a question for you here. Yes, not as much for me.
Well, this was actually it was your topic. So I think a lot of people like to hear about mentoring and how to get into it. I think a lot of people are kind of confused on the paths to take and who to speak to know a bit more about it. So so I think it's an interesting topic to speak about. But this was your topic, Monika, so I don't want to steal your line.
Well, the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic was because I was hearing so much about it, and no one really ever told me, how do I find a mentor? How does it work? How should I go about it? It was all like mentoring. Those are all great things for your career, but no one really explained it to me. So I thought that maybe more people who are starting off in their career, they feel like they would like to explore it, but they just didn't know where to start. So that was basically the motivation behind having this event.
I mean, I personally haven't necessarily noticed a rise in discussions around mentoring, but what I have noticed is perhaps a shift in talking about mental health and well-being more, that perhaps the taboos have changed, that it's okay to talk about, do you know what, things are pretty crap at the moment, life is a bit weird, and actually it would be good to be able to sort of talk through things with someone else. There has been a more focus on, at the social element, we have a well-being officer, which is amazing, because that she's been incredible for helping our teams get through this, and letting people openly talk about what's going on in terms of working from home, and all of the challenges of bringing up children while you're trying to work, and doing Zoom calls while you've got kids and cats hanging off you. None of this is easy, and I've just noticed there's a bit more openness to say and to call it out and say, this is all a bit difficult, and can we talk about it? So perhaps the mentoring sort of fits nicely into that it's part of a talking approach, that by being able to sort of have trusted people that you can talk things through, it does help you with your career.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Patrizia, do you have any views on this?
Kind of want to say nothing to add. Yeah, it is exactly that, that you can just talk about things that are, maybe a bit more personal, a bit more, out of the work life that you know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, have you felt that you started reaching out to your mentor more often ever since you've been working from home, or has it been the same?
Actually, yeah, it was a bit more regular at the beginning of the whole lockdown and pandemic situation. But to be fair, we have kind of been used to do that like on a virtual base, just because she's not living in London directly. Yeah, but it was just like, different, more and different things to talk through on how to tackle them. So yeah, actually, yes.
Have your mentees started reaching out more to you over the last couple of months, Tamara?
Yes, I think much like the rest of the country, there was kind of silence for a few weeks, and then lots of contact while everyone was kind of just going through their own thing. But yeah, absolutely. I think people wanting support and ideas, and interestingly, because I'm working with entrepreneurs, some of them have been at real risk of things going badly. So some of it was just, talking through the options of what to do next. But a lot of it was actually this kind of fire in people's bellies of, here's an opportunity to change the company or to do something differently, and pivot what we're doing. So I think I ended up having quite a lot of creative sessions just about, what about if we do this or do that? And so that was quite an interesting change as well.
That sounds great. I actually thought that maybe it's also because people feel like they miss the human contact, like you're not in the office with your colleagues, so it would be nice to just reach out to your mentor and have the little chat that you would normally have with your colleagues, perhaps.
Yeah, a lot of WhatsApp, I think, as well.
Yeah, right. We have a final question here before we're going to wrap up. Can the panel recommend alternatives to face-to-face mentor activities for those fed up with Zoom? Are there other creative ways a mentor can guide a mentee in your experience? For instance, little personal development projects.
Just trying to think of the alternatives to the sort of the Zoom approach.
Yeah.
I mean, God, it feels a bit like a telephone call feels so retro, but I get a lot out of it. For everyone who's just fed up with being on video, it can be quite nice and weirdly intimate to just have a telephone call with someone. But I would say mix it up. It's a mixture of WhatsApp, Zoom, telephone calls, and perhaps if you're in the same vicinity, at least a socially distanced coffee can make the world of difference. I think. Yeah, I'm a big fan of remote working. Ironically, my first company, The Social Element, it's actually pretty much all 300 people around the world all working from home anyway. But I'm a huge fan of people actually getting together and being in person. So if you can manage a socially distanced coffee, it probably will be a very positive thing.
But I think the personal projects are an option. I mean, again, as Tamara said, have a mixture of things and kind of keep it different. But the projects definitely help as well. Yeah, we've done that a little bit. Be that like little writing tasks or just like I don't know, expand your network. So until we see each other again in a month, you have you've called, I don't know, X amount of journalists and just chat to them. That kind of little projects that definitely works. Or just having a shared Google Docs. I know everyone does that at work, but it works for mentoring as well if you don't feel like seeing anyone or talking to anyone in person.
Right. Okay, well, I would like to wrap it up now. I would love to thank both Tamara and Patrizia for their amazing insights. It's been really great to have you guys on the panel today.